Welcome to ABCs of Anesthesia. Got another episode with one of my favorite people in the world, Dr. Forbes McGain. So this is really, you're about to release an article about the environmental impact and comparison of intravenous or peripheral venous cannulation. And this is going to go out as one of our Future Anesthesia initiatives. So please sign up to Future Anesthesia on Instagram. It's just it's a great platform where we're trying to just put out really actionable things to help you in the sustainability space. So that's Future Anesthesia on Instagram. And now, Forbes. So Forbes is an anesthetist and intensivist at the hospital where I work. And to me, you're the OG of sustainability, Forbes. And it's just really great to have you on to, I guess, share your insights in this very specific thing. So, how are you going, and how's everything with this particular article?
Thank you very much, Lahiru. Once again, it is great to be chatting again. So this is a study, the environmental impact of peripheral venous cannulation, a comparison between methods. And the first author is Michael Bai, who's a junior anaesthetic registrar. Great to have him as the first author. Great to also engage, as you know, Lahiru. I'm getting older now, and so it's good to have the youth of today involved in these sort of sustainability projects. And get publications out of it. Scott McAllister, the life cycle assessment expert. Catherine O'Shea, who works with us also at the Healthcare Carbon Lab at the University of Melbourne. And also Ruth Davies, who's a junior anaesthesia trainee as well. And it's great to see another trainee getting their names out in the paper.
And Ruth, she helps us so much on ABCs of Anesthesia. So, a real friend, big fan. So why cannulation packs? What was the, I guess, motivation to assess this in particular?
Really, really important. So cannulation packs, it is one of the bugbears of, of junior trainees to be inserting intravenous cannulae when so much waste is created. Of course, IV cannulas are a vital part of routine care of patients, both in anaesthesia and well and truly beyond that in all of medicine. But at the same time, Michael and Ruth and others have, often come to me and said, well, why do we have to be using so much stuff? And it is interesting to hear as a contrast between what we tend to do in anaesthesia, which is a relatively frugal approach to IV cannulation, or what described in our study as minimal effective consumable cannulation. In other words, not too much going on there. You've got the vascular access device, the intravenous cannula, a swab, skin dressing, and a reusable tourniquet, at least in Western Health, as you know. But on the other hand, the residents upstairs and in other parts of the hospital are using a pack which contains more things, little bits of plastic here and there, which adds to the story, and particularly the use of a single-use tourniquet.
Yeah, and you mentioned that specifically because that seems like that's the thing that makes it use up so much more carbon, that specific single-use tourniquet versus reusable tourniquet. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's also what ends up costing more as well. So what we found, fairly straightforward study, looking at the comparison between what happens in the wards for the residents and what happens in anesthesia. And at contrast, if we think of it in terms of cost for what's happening on the wards is $5.60 Australian. What's happening in anaesthesia is around $2.60. I'm just approximating. So you're not saving very much, $3 per cannula insertion. But it's the sheer volume here of these things happening, like 100,000 of these things happening a year in Western Health alone. So you start to add up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars saved. And in addition, the difference in the carbon footprint from the resident approach with more stuff versus the minimal effective approach in anaesthesia is a difference of around 300 grams. Now, what does that mean, 300 grams of CO2? It's once again not a large amount. It's probably similar to driving your average car, in the order of a couple of kilometres. It once again, though, is the difference in the sheer volume of these things. And I'd also just like to get in there, before we get into the details more about reusable disposal cannulas, I think there's a very strong support here from infection prevention in terms of reducing the use of unnecessary cannulas is the first thing we should always be thinking about. Not cycling, not even reusing things. It's about reducing unnecessary things, and also for the patient, because the last thing we want is a case of infective endocarditis from a cannula that's been sitting around in the person's forearm for a few days.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, let's go back to why is it that in anesthesia we're often doing the minimal approach, whereas on the ward they're doing a more elaborate approach? Why is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's something, as you and I know, that's something that's been explored by another trainee right now that we're engaged with. My impression, and this is not based on actual evidence, it's more ad hoc evidence, is that it's felt to be safer by having a pack there. It's a more controlled environment in anesthesia than what's happening in the wards. And so having your little an area of sterility will assist you in providing the best access and the safest way on the ward. Now, whether that's true or not is a different matter. Yes. But I think that's where a lot of it is fear and worry about contamination on the ward.
Yes. So, I mean, that's the tension, isn't it? If we go to the minimal product, there's this thought that maybe it's an infection issue. And for many years, or decades even, this was the thing that we had to do. We had to try to get infection control much better. And perhaps now, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe we're slightly overshooting on one side, so overcorrecting at the expense of the environment and sustainability on the other side. Is that kind of where we might be? And so if you could outline the infection prevention stance on this.
I think there's a natural tension between protecting the patient and the environment. Not protecting the patient or the environment. We need to be putting the "and" in there wherever possible, realizing that the patient is number one, but the environment, we're trying to minimize as much as possible our environmental footprint, but still providing excellent care.
Yeah. So, is there much evidence for doing the minimal approach that we're doing and still having equivalent outcomes in terms of minimizing infections?
Yeah, I think it's once again an area that hasn't really been explored. What we could say here is we know anecdotally that rates of infections of peripheral cannulae in post-op patients is vanishingly rare. So you could say that a lot of it is because of day cases, relatively well ASA 1 and 2 cases, not being put in the cubital fossa, which definitely increases risk. Those sorts of things are really, I suppose, make it easier for us as anaesthetists. So we should be cognizant at least that it may not be apples and pears that we're comparing. But by the same token, we know that these things are not getting infected from the anaesthetic minimal effective approach. And so the actual risk of infective endocarditis from our patients is vanishingly rare. And so what we're doing is not wrong. It's appropriate. I think it would be an opportunity to reflect more broadly of what's going on beyond anaesthesia and to consider the environment a bit more carefully in that process.
Yeah, okay. And just to get across some of the staggering amounts that we're talking about, so using the minimal method, roughly annually 31.6 tons of CO2 emissions saved, roughly equivalent to driving, I think, 90,000 kilometers in a car, or something along the lines of, even though it is a $3 saving, that's about $300,000 annually in our particular hospital.
Yeah.
So there's massive amounts of it if you look at all of Australia or all of the developed world or the high resource world.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's the exciting part about what we do here is that you and I, every day as a sort of micro approach, we don't have a huge footprint, but we certainly do when we consider ourselves as part of the broader healthcare system, not just in anaesthesia, but certainly beyond that. So that's why I'm excited by this study and where it can go to next. I will mention, we can mention reusable tourniquets if you want.
Yeah, let's go through the 3 R's. So reduce, reuse, and recycle. Just to take a step back and take a broad approach to healthcare in general, medicine in general, anesthetics in general, or the tourniquet what does reduce, reuse, and recycle mean in this particular context then?
Yeah. So reduced, I think, very much is always considering the oral or nasogastric version of what you're about to give IV. Can this be an oral antibiotic? Now, that may not initially be relevant to someone who's sick, septic shock, whatever it happens to be. Intravenous is the way to go. But, when, generally after every 3 days, you're replacing a peripheral cannula. So could we now convert to oral as the patient gets better? It is a very important role. So reducing, not using things when you don't need to be using IV, and then taking IVs out as soon as you possibly can. And I know infection prevention strives very hard on this, and antibiotic stewardship is very important in this way. But it goes well beyond that. I mean, we as anaesthetists too, you consider the intravenous paracetamol. Not only is that a costly process, it's also environmentally much more probably tenfold at least compared to the oral paracetamol. So I think we all need to think well beyond just antibiotics or the common medications, but you could certainly reduce the amount of unnecessary IV cannulations occurring in the ED, in the wards, etc. And I know there is good research in this area. It's not something that I particularly focused upon, but it's great that there's increasing amount of effort in this area.
Yeah, nice one. How about the reusing of tourniquets?
Yeah, and I think so. When you think of reuse, I mean, so we can't really, reuse the vascular access device or, intravenous cannula or those sorts of things. But we can reuse the actual tourniquet that's used. I know there have been studies that have shown that, tourniquets, if they're left lying around and if they're felt or linen tourniquets, then they can get infected. This is much less of a problem with silicone sort of smooth tourniquets. They take a bit of time to get used to, but they can certainly be used. So this is important to reuse tourniquets rather than having disposable tourniquets. Big difference there. And really, there isn't evidence that people have been infected from tourniquets. So reusable tourniquets, use silicone, use something that's able to be cleaned relatively easily with a wipe down, and on we go. As you know, we've been using those for a long time in anaesthesia.
Yeah, absolutely. How about the last R, the third R, recycle? What do we need to do to get that to an optimal level?
Yeah, and as you say, it is certainly the last R. It's not something I'd focus on. It's hard. It's because, even something in a, whether it's a pack, where you're going to be using quite a lot of things, or even from you and I using in anaesthesia minimal effective cannulation with the skin dressing, for example, that sort of stuff that you peel off a bit of plastic. Gee, it's hard. It's mixed plastic. It's light. It's various varieties of HDPE or polyethylene or polypropylene, and it's really hard to recycle that. I'd say yes, there are possibilities of doing it. It's something where I think there's ongoing engagement with that, even if it's instead of ending up in landfill, but rather as sort of, road service materials mixed in with tar and things like that. There's work going on from engineering to do that. It's not something, Lou, I tend to focus on because firstly, it doesn't have any money. Secondly, it doesn't really reduce the carbon footprint that much. And thirdly, it's jolly hard.
Yeah. Hey, so I think we've covered most of what we need to cover in a nice short podcast session. So what's the take-home message of your article, just to recap again?
Yeah, I think it's those 3 R's again, really 2 R's. So reduce the use of unnecessary intravenous cannulating, get onto oral or nasogastric as quickly as you can, and then reuse the tourniquets, because they were almost half of the whole story of the actual even if you're still using, or if you have to continue to use intravenous cannulation packs, if you get rid of this, if you get packs that no longer have the disposable tourniquets but use reusables instead of that, then you're already halving the carbon footprint and cost. In fact, more than half the cost. So I think what I'm saying, there's all these different ways we can approach it. And so even if you hit a brick wall and you're not able to convert to what, we as anaesthetists use for various reasons as a resident on the ward, being engaged with using a pack that no longer has disposable tourniquets is a really good way to go.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's a really great summary. I think lots of things that even a junior doctor, an intern, a medical student, a resident can easily focus on. And if it's a project that you think you want to, do in your own hospital, it's a great way to get involved in research and sustainability. The article will come out in the British Journal of Anaesthesia, BJA, as a correspondence, probably in the next few weeks or months, I imagine. But look for that article entitled "Environmental Impact of Peripheral Venous Cannulation: Comparison Between Methods." Please get involved, and like I said before, just sign up to Future Anesthesia on Instagram. Hopefully, lots more projects, lots more interesting, actionable information that we're going to share on that platform. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks very much, Forbes, for being here.
Thanks, Liam.
Now, what's new with ABCs of Anesthesia is that we're forming a whole bunch of very comprehensive courses for every stage of your anesthetic journey, from medical student to procedural skills, from foundations in anesthesia, as well as really important exam lectures and clinical anesthesia courses as well.